So there's this woman, and she's driving, and she's headed to Burlington, Vermont. There's a blizzard, and the snow is coming as hard as it can. It's all over the road, and she begins to go a little bit to fear. And she sees up ahead of her a truck pulling a snowplow. And she thought, oh, wow, oh, this is good. And so she goes and she gets behind the person driving, and wherever he's going, she's going, and the debris is kind of coming back upon her, but she at least feels like she's getting somewhere. And in a few minutes, the guy comes to a stop, and he gets out of his truck, and he goes back to her car, and he says, ma'am, where are you headed? And she said, well, I'm headed to Burlington, Vermont. And he said, well, ma'am, you're not going to get there following me. I'm going to clear out a parking lot. Today we're talking about creating healing. And for all of us to step into a greater space of all the possibilities that are for us, we probably are not going to get there following someone else. And how amazing it is that when we look at great people of God, or we look at the co-founder of the Unity Movement, thank heavens that Myrtle Fillmore did not follow what people told her. Thank heavens that when they said you're not going to live past 40, thank heavens that when they said you're not going to make it, you have this disease and it's going to take your life, thank heavens she stood in a space that said, this may be part of my sacred story, but it will not define me as a limited being. Thank heavens that she was not willing to follow someone else. The sacred path and the true spiritual path is that we come to a place in our own understanding in depth that there is no one to follow, that we truly are an original idea. Thank heavens for me that, as I've told you laughing before, that I didn't follow what my teacher said to my parents. In the 6th grade, as Mrs. Brown said, that I was never going to amount to anything because I talked too much. You know? So, thank heavens that I didn't follow her as the law. You see, even some of you seated out there today, there's still something within you that is calling you to birth a part of yourself, but because of something, or an event, or a moment, you see, that healing cannot truly be created. I always think it's important with Unity to talk about healing. Because often people will say, immediately when you mention the word healing, or they'll at least say to themselves, well, I don't have anything that needs to be healed. I don't really have anything wrong with me. So what I would say to you is, that is your healing. And we'll pray for you. Because if you're breathing, if you're on this planet, this dimension of this earth dimension, there is a healing that always has our name on it, personally designed as a template for us to walk in and through as us, so that we may see the divine expressed through us in that understanding. And healing isn't always looking at and wanting to let go of that which is wrong with you. Sometimes it's the great invocation to call forth that which is right with you, you see. For some people, healing could be just to accept a compliment. As I was sharing on a show the other day that, you know, to me, just to keep breathing when somebody used to pay me attention or say, oh, I like your shirt or something, I go, oh, that's okay. That's all right. But then it became, oh, well, yeah, thanks. It's not really mine. Or I got it on sale, or, you know, it's not really the way I like it. I like it a little better. It's not my favorite. You know, it became like this dissertation of non-acceptance, you know. And then to the point of thank you, and then to evolve to thank you for noticing. You know, so when we immerse in the spiritual beingness of ourselves, it's the God of our glory who thought enough of us to make us. And it's not I'm often egotistical about myself. It's about that we are collectively celebrating that which is, you see. So often people have a dis-ease that people recognize straight up, where a lot of people, ours can be hidden, and we can keep them hidden. But they will surface, and they do, willingly or unwillingly. So that's the space. I don't know how many of you saw Dr. Reverend Michael Bernard Beckwith on the Dr. Oz show this week. But we were really thrilled as a New Thought culture that he was featured, because it helps all of us be known and recognized. And he said that in our society today that we are all somewhat suffering from intention deficit disorder. Intention deficit disorder, that there is an intention of life and that we're always giving these guidelines and this message to what we believe. We're always planting seeds. We're always nurturing and growing whatever it is that we're focusing on. And how do we do that? And so in that space, I was reminded of a radio show that Earl Nightingale did many years ago. It was immensely famous. But on that radio show that he was talking about the secret of life, he also made mention George Bernard Shaw. And he was talking about how George Bernard Shaw said that people are always so quick with their intention to blame other people and their conditions and issues, to blame other things outside of themselves instead of claiming responsibility. The people in my boat, they know, because I've told them, anytime you ever hear me making a reference to somebody else, call me on it. Because the true serenity is God grant me the serenity to accept the people I cannot change, the courage to change the one I can, and the wisdom to know that would be me, you see. And so in that space, I love that. I wish I'd thought of it. It's just really that good. But in that energy, in that space, what he likened it to was a farmer that goes out and buys a big piece of land. Now that farmer has free will to do anything with that land that he chooses. The land would be mine and our minds. And that farmer can choose to plant corn or wheat, something that will grow and be nurturing, can choose that, or that farmer can choose nightshade, a poison. Something that also will grow abundantly, but cannot ever be used for the reasons in which it is designed. And we, with intention, are the ones that are planting the seeds. So do we plant the seeds that are moving us in our own land of life towards things that we really want to see in our lives? Or are we planting seeds that are like the poison to our reality? Are we going, wow, every year gets better? The best is yet to come? Or, oh man, I dread that. I'm not even going to tell you how old I am. Well, guess what? We already can tell. I'm sorry, you just did. Do we, how do we go, the best is yet to come? That's what we say when God is good all the time, and all the time God is good, is we're saying the best is yet to come. I'm looking for it. Those are the seeds I'm going to plant in advance. Doesn't mean sometimes my reality doesn't need to change, or I don't need to shift. But it means ultimately that I'm looking for it because it's going to be better than anything I've known. Can you make that distinction? Right? And so in that place and in that space, we were invited. I go every year to St. Leo's and Dade City. How many of you have been to St. Leo's, to the monastery there? Caitlin, I know you're a student there. And so in that particular space of St. Leo's, it's incredible. If you haven't taken the time I would urge you to go. It's such a day outing, and it's like a different Florida with a lot of land and the horses and the cattle, and it's just really spread out. But there's a monastery, and so you feel like you're in Europe. You feel like you're in another country within our community. And there they have monks that they're around and visit with you and everything of the Benedictine order, and the nuns are there, and it's just great. Even just to go sit in the monastery is just a great treat. But Bibi and I always like to get there early, and we go across the street to the grotto. And it's just so wonderful, and people have come and they've lit candles for their family, and they've written letters and they've stuck them in the cement, and it's just a sacred, humble surrender experience. And as we were there and kind of going off on our own ways and meditated and prayed, and as we're walking away, I looked, and there's Bibi. She's taking the vines down, because what had happened is there were vines that were starting to wrap around the bamboo. These tall bamboo, they were gorgeous, been there for years, but the vine was wrapping around, and though they were destined to be tall, the vine was bringing them down. And so when I speak there each year, I won't let them, give me anything. I'm doing it as a way to give back. It's people in recovery. I said, this particular time, there is something you could do for me. During your weekend of retreat, if you would go remove those vines, so that those bamboo, they can be tall. That's sometimes what you and I are required to do when we are focusing on what can be healed, is that we have attached to us some kind of vine. Maybe it's an understanding about something that's not true for us. Maybe it's something that we keep hearing intuitively that we need to do it, and we've yet to do it. What could it be? But it prevents us from that ability to be tall. I heard a minister talk about, he said that they had lost a great member of their congregation, and everybody kind of leaned forward, and he said, and the person's name was someone else. And we're so sad that someone else has left us. He said, because, when leadership announced that they needed help with the class, and they needed help with the choir, or they needed help as volunteers, or they needed help with finances, that people always said, well, we don't have to think about that because someone else is going to do it. Somebody else has got that handled. Somebody else will take care of it. It's not really, I don't have to be concerned because someone else is here. And he went on to say, now someone else is gone. And when I think about that relativity to my life, I think about coming from this premise of not feeling worthy and not feeling okay. So I spent the majority of the first part of my evolutionary life thinking about someone else. If I could just fix someone else, if I could make them achieve their goals, if I could project onto them who they are and their possibility, because I didn't feel comfortable doing that for me, you see. Have any of you done that? Until you get that it's only yours to do, until the great truth comes through you, in you, as the being of God and essence, then it hasn't really occurred yet. Because there will always be a longing, there will be a disconnect, there will be a lack of vibrancy. And obviously that's clear if 70% of our society is on some form of medication rather than meditation. And I'm not making it all wrong, that's not my path to do that. But what I would say that would be all right is knowing that people are excited about their lives. That people are thinking about when they go to these high school reunions, not see who's gained the most weight or lost the most hair or has hair growing where they didn't, but that they would really celebrate these people are thriving about life because they're happy, because they're blissful, because they're living their life on purpose. I've been in that space this week as I don't know about you, but growing up in a Southern Baptist community, I hear hymns all the time. I know every one of them, even when people would breathe. But there's one that I hear often. Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. Thou art the potter, I am the clay. Mold me and make me after thy will, while I am waiting, yielded and still. And so when I feel that song and I feel those words, and I feel and I celebrate often, what is right with me is wanting to be out of my own way. That I can let Spirit shape me, you see, in that space. And that song was created in 1902 by Adeline Pollard. And she was writing music, and she wanted to go to South Africa. And she was very excited about going, and she could never come up with the money. So she was distraught. She got mad at God. She thought, well, this stuff doesn't work, you know. God's not really about me. And so she went to a Wednesday night healing, probably like what we have here. And as she sat down, she seated herself behind an elderly woman, and she could hear the woman talking to herself. And the elderly woman was sitting there in the pew, and she was going, "That's right, Lord. You just use me up. However you want to use me up, Lord, you just use me up." And she really got that. She really got that, and she went home and she wrote those 4 stanzas just like that. And you can still feel that permeating in the energy of 1902, at least I do, in that space. When we look at Scripture and we talk about the most interpreted Lord's Prayer and how people declare it, on my retreat this week with my teacher, we had such a grand time delving into that in a different way. And we were sharing about how when in the beginning, "Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven." We were saying how reassuredly that is all of our covenants, that all of us have a covenant that says, God's got this. Who you were birthed to be, you're going to be, because you've been given that promise. We spend so much time worrying about it or wondering if we're doing the right thing, but yet we know there's a covenant. And then we go on to look at, "Give us this day our daily bread." Those are the gifts that we're going to get every day, not just physical bread, but the gifts, the abundance, the life, the friendship, the card in the mail. Somebody sends you an email you haven't talked to, the Facebook, the Twitter, whatever. You get gifts. And then the other gift that we get is when we forgive our debts and we forgive our debtors. Because in the true meaning of forgive in Aramaic, it means to release. So we're free then, because we're not holding on to stuff and carrying it around. And when it talks about leave us not in temptation, but deliver us from our dark, we're knowing that God protects us, that we are always protected. And at the end, and thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever, that's our declaration, is to finish off with remembering that it comes from something greater than ourselves. And I love that when I look at it that way, don't you? I delve further in that to look at the original Aramaic of the Lord's Prayer. And these could have been the words that were spoken then. "O birther, father, mother of the cosmos, focus your light within us, make it useful. Your reign of unity now, through our fiery hearts and willing hands, help us love beyond our ideals and sprout acts of compassion for all creatures. Animate the earth within us. We then feel the wisdom underneath supporting all. Untangle the knots within, so that we can mend our heart's simple ties to each other. Don't let surface things delude us, but free us from what holds us back from our true purpose." Wow. Out of you, the astonishing fire, returning light and sound to the cosmos. Now, I would have loved that in the 6th grade. That would have really worked. To feel that fire and to feel that connection, because ultimately that's what we're all seeking, isn't it? Is to feel the connection, to know that it's really real, to have some kind of scientific experience where we can prove to ourselves that God is always there. I shared with you a couple of weeks ago how I said goodbye unexpectedly and very quickly to one of the greatest loves of my life. He was my Yorkie twin, and he had weighed not close to 5 pounds. And since he passed so quickly, I have had many days of singing Have Thine Own Way and crying and processing in that space. And one of the things that I said a couple of days ago, I was talking to him and I asked him if he was out of the bardo. And I said, I really would like to know if you're okay. You know, I just want to know. That's all. I know, but I want to know. I know, but I just need to know. And I said, you know that I love feathers. And you know that's my sign, so send me some. And so last evening, unplanned, I wound up having a number of friends, very dear friends, over at the house, and we decided to walk across the street to the beach. And so we're walking the beach, and all of a sudden I noticed that my friends are all leaning over, and we kind of keep saying to each other, now isn't this interesting? I've never seen so many feathers. And so, as we're walking along, and we pick them up, they are everywhere. There's more than the cup will hold. There's more than we can pick up. Because, see, that's the spirit of life. And I could feel, in a way that I understood God in that moment, that my little boy is okay. And that 5 pounds is doing something actively. You see, the love of God cannot outlive us. It's everywhere. And it's those moments that we surrender to the grace, because we cannot deny that it's true. I'll close with a story of a man that ran his car off the ditch, and he was out kind of in the country, and he saw this farmer. The farmer recognized what he had done, and he said, no problem, I'll get my horse Buddy, and we'll hook his chain to your car, and we'll be able to lift you out. And so they do so, they hook up the car, and so the farmer says, Nellie, pull the car. Well, Buddy doesn't move. Then the farmer says, Coco, move the car. Well, Buddy didn't do anything. And then the farmer says, all right, John, move the car. And Buddy didn't move. So then the farmer says, okay, Buddy, move the car. And Buddy moved the car right away. He pulled and pulled, and the car was moved. And so the guy was very happy and very much appreciated that this had happened. But he said, I'm just curious. I don't understand. If you knew the horse's name is Buddy, why did you say the 3 other names? He said, well, here's the thing. He's blind. And so if I made him think from the get-go he's the only one, well, he would have never moved this car by himself. Often we are blinded because we think that we have to do it all by ourselves. And you're living proof to me that we do not. Namaste. 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 Thank you. Thank you.